I want to first of all say I'm Julie Wake, the Executive Director of the Arts Foundation of Cape Cod, and I welcome you to the first of our second season of the Modern Love speaker series. This time we're doing in-studio visits with artists and here on the Cape and beyond. And tonight we're here in Provincetown. First, I want to say thank you to our many patrons and our Creative Exchange members that have joined us tonight, as well as friends and family in our network. So thank you for joining us. And I also want to give a big thank you to William Ravis, who is our official real estate office for the Arts Foundation. We're so grateful for your support in prioritizing the arts on the Cape. So thank you so much, Bill Ravis and your team, for supporting the arts on Cape Cod. So thank you for that. So I want to get right into it and welcome you here into Joe Hay's studio here in, as I mentioned, Provincetown. And I want to actually introduce Joe Hay as our inaugural Artist of the Year. We're so happy to be working with you on this, so congratulations on becoming Artist of the Year for the Arts Foundation.
Thank you so much. I can't tell you the honour this is, and the fact that it was based on these particular paintings is just, it's almost too much to believe. It's absolutely fabulous. Thank you.
Oh, well, your work is mind-blowing and is really making a difference, and we will get into that. We're gonna talk about the ladies behind us in a few minutes, but first I want to give everybody kind of a sense of place. Like, where are we? So we have Tom Chartrand behind the camera tonight, and Jordan Syme from the Arts Foundation. And so we're here in Joe's studio. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what, like maybe the drum kit or something? I'm obsessed with the drum kit.
She's obsessed with the drum kit. Well, I play the drums, so when I'm not painting, I'm practicing the drums, and this is my practice kit.
It's so cool. It's very cool.
But pretty much the rest of the space is where you're seeing the paintings is where I actually paint. Depending on the size of painting that I'm doing, it will depend which wall I use. Obviously, these larger paintings need to be made on the back wall. I do use an easel, but I prefer to be against the wall pretty much with the larger works.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And where do you store all your paintings normally? I mean, are they in here or?
They're usually in here, yes.
Yeah.
I wanted to sort it out so you could actually see the paintings, but because it can get quite chaotic at this end. But obviously, the more space you have, the more free you are to paint. So this has been a really, really nice moment to have this sort out for you guys to come and visit.
And so tell me a little bit about like what's on the walls. Like, you're studying the skeletal system, the human body.
Yeah, yes, I sort of reminders of all of that. I studied it at the New York Academy of Art, and I did the anatomy track because I was particularly interested in understanding the figure in depth.
Okay. It's very cool. It's so exciting. I know that often when we visit artists in their studios, there's often a sense of panic when people come into your studio. How do you feel about us being in your studio today?
I actually like it. I think it's such a solitary vibe usually in here. So to have you guys being in here doing creative things with me, it's really lovely.
Oh, nice. Oh, I love that. So, okay, so we're in Provincetown, but I'm going to ask you to take us to another place. Obviously, you're not from here.
Correct.
So tell us where you're originally from.
I'm from Newcastle upon Tyne, which is in the northeast of England. I did my foundation course of painting there, but then I went to London and did my degree in graphic design in London.
Okay. Did you grow up in kind of a artistic family, or were you like stranger in a strange land?
I don't think it would be that extreme, but it was there wasn't a sort of an overt art bent to say. Let's say neither of my parents played instruments. Although my mother did try to learn guitar later in life, but I always knew that I wanted to be a painter. I responded to the magazines that my mother would get on painting and felt an affinity with painters in the magazines. I didn't quite know how to make it happen, and I would get extraordinarily frustrated that I couldn't just do it automatically, because I felt this real affinity, but it just didn't flow as a child, because I didn't realise you had to practice like crazy.
Right.
As you do with anything.
Right. So when did you start practicing a lot more? When you went to university?
Well, throughout university I did graphics, but I always did lots of life drawing, and this sort of need to paint the figure or to be involved with the figure has been right through my life one way or another. I think I spent many years trying to learn to paint, like through museums, through books, through trying to find a way to. I always used to say, like, I want to find a system to make paintings, my own paintings. So that's what I spent a lot of time around all of the other things that I might have done, such as working or doing graphic design, trying to find this system.
Interesting. Okay, so then, so you end up in New York.
I do.
Okay, so tell me about what was life like in New York for you.
Well, once I graduated from school in London, I worked a short while there in magazines, and then I transferred to the States to work in magazines. And I loved it, and I learned a lot of great stuff that I think of now, such as composition, in my portraiture particularly. But I was always underneath wanting to paint, and once I became art director of a magazine, I decided it was time to leave and follow this desire to paint and to really sort of, make a go of it.
Any regrets?
None whatsoever. None whatsoever. No. I loved all of the other things that I did, but just the fact that following your passion is there's nothing like it.
Right, so true. So tell me, what did you paint when you were in New York? Was it the figures? Was it portraits?
Yes, I would go to the Art Students League and paint formally from the figure and do life drawing and painting. I also had a big obsession with Francis Bacon at that time, so I was trying to understand how he was able to make both representational and abstract work at the same time. That to me seemed like the sort of the pinnacle of achievement, if you could do both of those things.
And okay, so we're in New York. You've quit your job as a creative director, and you've become full-time artist.
Yes.
Artist, right? How do you feel when you are you like someone that is like, I'm an artist?
No, because I'm British.
Yeah, we've had this conversation before, so I wanted to ask you that again.
It's a very grand title, I think, to be an artist if you're English. I refer to my craft, which is painting, so I am a painter.
Okay. So you decide to leave New York, and you come here to Provincetown. What's the connection?
Very begrudgingly, I came for vacation with friends, and I really didn't want to leave the concrete. I just couldn't understand why you had to leave the city to go and relax. And we got here, and instantly I was in love. I mean, like many people, that you sort of arrive after that long journey. It's 5 or 6 hours traveling.
Yeah.
Turn off Snail Road, and you see that beautiful view of the bay and all of the buildings that are higgledy-piggledy and just great characters in themselves.
Right.
And I just was smitten from the moment that we made that turn.
Did your painting shift or change as you moved kind of from living in a concrete jungle, literally, to coming to like the sand dunes, the dunes of Provincetown?
I don't think it did, to be honest. I think that I've stayed pretty true to the desire to paint the figure. That said, I've painted many subjects on the way, really to get to grips with what I feel is the foundation of whatever you paint, which is geometry. So I've painted still lifes and animals and this and that and the other, just to be able to deal with different forms.
I love your rabbits. If you have an opportunity to check out Joe's Instagram page with the rabbits, sometimes they're really like cute and whimsical, and I know that you have lots of rabbits in your yard here in the summer because I've witnessed that. So what inspires you about being in Provincetown?
Well, coming here, the mental space was entirely different. I mean, from being in New York to, where everything's sort of on top of you and just literally in your head all day long. And then being here in the beautiful openness of the geography here, it took me a while to get adjusted to the space that you have for thinking and processing and just witnessing your own life. It was very different.
And so your time here, we have to talk about, so I just want to share a little bit about how I got to know your work. I got to know these ladies first before I got to know you. I actually visited the Commons here in Provincetown. I had a meeting with Pete Hawking, and he was showing me around, and I walked into the room that these ladies were in, and this is just a sampling of all of them, and I was blown away. And when I read your bio, and then I could actually still smell the paint, and Pete was like, yeah, she literally just dropped one of them off. Yeah. And I thought it was just so powerful to see these images of women who I recognized, and it just made me want to know who the artist was behind these images and why. And so can you tell us a little bit about how this body of work, which is called the Persisters, but I'd love for you to talk a little bit about like what inspired you with this kind of body of work.
Well, prior to this, I had painted a portrait of Hillary Clinton because I was thrilled that in my eyes we were going to have a female president. So that had been painted to support her campaign when my partner and I had a gallery. This series of work then followed when we didn't have a female president, and I was actually, I've had a very privileged life, and I felt terror the morning that Hillary Clinton didn't win the election. So I started to look to figures of people, not necessarily in power, but just people that I thought I could rely on to navigate a way through what was going on for me emotionally, particularly. And the first painting I made was of Rachel Maddow. Does that sort of answer the question?
Yeah.
How that sort of came about?
Yeah, absolutely. And what's your process in like deciding who?
That's quite an emotional process actually. I think I lived and breathed, like many people, the news.
Yeah.
During those, certainly the early years, but and it was just sort of, I could feel who I needed to paint. I mean, it was pretty simple. It was just, I don't want to overcomplicate it because it would, I would feel that person, and then that was a tremendous, what would the word be? I don't want to say gift because it sounds too, but it was, to have that level of desire to do something. I hadn't experienced that. I feel like I'd spent many years making paintings that were teaching me how to paint, and this series of paintings I could just go gangbusters on them.
Are you saying that it was kind of like therapeutic to paint them?
Yes, I mean I even think therapeutic is sort of, it was so big for me what was happening and how
spiritual.
Well, probably all of that. But it was to deal with this fear that I had. Like, as I said, I hadn't experienced fear like this. I mean, I was so afraid of this person having the nuclear codes that I felt he was absolutely irresponsible, and just I didn't know where to put that feeling of, and because what could I do about it? So these paintings, became all of those words that you're saying, but it felt even more than that. It felt like on some sort of cellular level it would stop me vibrating because I felt so overly emotional all the time about this stuff.
And what has been the reaction or the response to this body of work?
I could not have predicted how well they were received, particularly by women. And from what you said initially, because they know these women,
Right.
So I think that's an important part of this.
Mm-hmm.
It really does help with the communication.
Mm-hmm.
But the comment that I get most often is, but it's just paint. Look at those paint marks. And that to me is very thrilling, because that's what I want. I want the paint to be apparent.
Mm-hmm.
I want the woman to be apparent and the paint to be apparent.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel that I've achieved what I was after with these paintings, which is monumentally, fulfilling.
Yeah, I bet. And do you have a favorite?
It changes by the day. So
Really?
yes, it depends. It usually depends on what I am working on at the moment.
Okay.
Because I look back to see how I might have accomplished something that I'm grappling with again in another painting.
Oh, interesting.
Like I
Yeah.
don't know how I painted Greta's nose.
It's incredible. Can you get a
I
shot
think
of that?
it's one of the most resolved noses.
Mm.
So I'll look back at that and remind myself.
Mm-hmm. It's incredible, like the brightness of her face and her eyes, and she's just so stoic, and and seeing every paint mark is incredible. You're right, like seeing the paint is the layering, and it's just very powerful. And especially the size. I think was there a process of understanding like the scale in which you chose?
Yes, because I had painted 2 or 3 women at a larger scale than this. They were 7 feet by 6 feet, I think, and these are 5 by 4 by 5. And it was just a little bit too big. I wanted it so you felt enveloped by the woman, but you didn't feel overpowered, or where you had to swing your head to see the whole thing. So I wanted it to be that it would be large, but it would be intimate at the same time.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And what's next for these Persisters? Are you thinking? Do you have people in mind?
It's definitely going to be a different wave of the next Persisters, I think, because this group and the others that are from this time were certainly born of an age that I hope we don't live through again.
Right.
So I don't quite know. I mean, I know the next one is for the foundation, so it's that's very exciting for me, and it's a very optimistic painting. I think I've started it already, so it has. In comparison to these guys, that I feel the optimism in these paintings too, but when that particular painting was in the room with these paintings, I could just sense a really big difference.
So Jo is referring to her next Persister sister, right? Yeah. For the Arts Foundation, we have asked her to do another Persister. She will be unveiling this in April, and we are not going to be sharing who this is, but feel free in the chat to guess who she might be. Who she might be painting. I'd love to hear any guessing or suggestions, so Jordan, let us know if anybody submits anything, but we're thrilled to see what you're going to do for us. I know who it is, and I'm just hoping I really don't say it by accident, like I did when we were practicing today. So I'm super excited. We're going to be unveiling Jo's next Persister April 28th. It's going to be at the Chatham Orpheum. And we'll send a follow-up email to everybody on how to register and come see the big reveal with Jo and I and our friends and family to see this big deal. And then we're actually going to auction off her painting at our gala on June 9th. So we're super excited, and hopefully in between those 2 spots we'll be able to get the painting out so people can see it and see it in person, because these pieces are just so powerful, and to see them live in a room and be with them is there is something very comforting about being in this room with these eyes on us. As I was mentioning when I was at the Commons, and I saw them all together in the room, it was just this real, I don't know, we have these little guardian angels here, like working for us and moving the needle. And I can imagine this was probably kind of going through your creative process of deciding who to paint. I mean, how did you were connecting with these ladies?
Yes, absolutely. And in order to sort of carry on the connection, this idea of them being face on was really important to me, that I wanted the viewer to be looking into the eyes of the women so that they could have their own relationship. The expression, I tried to keep it as neutral as possible, so that again you're bringing your feelings to the painting, and not just witnessing somebody laughing or smiling or with too much of an emotional overtone. There was something else I was going to say then. I can't remember. The thing that was particularly moving for me was that many women asked if they could sleep in the gallery where we had them.
Oh, interesting.
Could they stay overnight with them? Could they just be with them?
Yeah.
And they wept too. That was, I hardly knew what to do with myself when that happened. But and that particularly around Christine Blasey Ford, which obviously that makes perfect sense. But yes, it was very. The whole thing has been very emotional. Good and well, it's no bad, but good, different emotions for myself to make the paintings to feel the relief that I was, trying to calm my own anxiety with the paintings, and then witnessing other women's connections, and then them speaking about them. That was incredible too, and not just about them wanting to be with them, but them becoming conversation pieces for other women to speak together.
So it's one of the reasons why the Arts Foundation's board of directors and staff at the Arts Foundation chose Jo was specifically about exactly what you're talking about, is this the power of the arts and using your art to connect with community. And so what you've done with Persisters is just created this conversation, right? That is sometimes, especially in these times and the past 2 years, have been so politically charged, and to do it in a beautiful, non-confrontational kind of way is just really beautiful. So, I mean, that's one of the reasons why the Arts Foundation selected Jo, is just this ability to really move the community and connect us all. So I really thank you for, what you've done and jumping into this. So.
Thank you. That's a really lovely observation, because I know technically and emotionally why I'm making the painting, but your response there is lovely. Thank you.
So if anyone has any questions, there are some questions coming in. Okay, Jordan is going to relay the questions to us.
So we have some questions already in the chat. First, Bethany says, your portraits are amazing on many levels. Particularly, it is so impressive how you managed to capture the person's personality so well, even in the still image. How do you pick that perfect moment?
Ooh. That's a good one.
Well, they're usually composites that I'm working from pieces of different photographs, because I don't know these people obviously. So, but there's I call it an understanding. I feel an understanding with the particular person I'm painting. And that's really what I follow. It's a feeling rather than a particular image. I know my understanding of, let's say, Kamala Harris is that she has attitude, but she's also giggly, and she has a soft side to her too. And I wanted to try and get all of that somehow into the painting. She's
What a
probably
great way to-
smiling a little bit more than.
Yeah, I was just going to interrupt you and say, what a great way to describe her, because she's bubbly, but she's hard.
Yes, she can.
She's got fight.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. That's I wanted all of that in there. And it's as I don't know these women, and that's always been the interesting thing to me, that people will say to me, "You have." I keep hearing the word essence. You've captured their essence.
Yeah.
And I'll think, well, how though? I don't know their essence, and do you know their essence? And but there's something that we all respond to, and that's interesting to me. That it's coming through somehow.
All right, another question from Aaliyah. Your color and brushwork is so good. How do you know when it's right?
This is my
secret
friend Aaliyah.
Recipe.
This is my
This is
my lovely friend Aaliyah, who I was in grad school with, and we were next door to each other. We had the best time. How do I know that's right? Well, to be honest, I think of you a lot, but I realise that tone is. I can make. I'm trying to say this the least technically. If you get the light to darkness right, sometimes the colour can be wrong. So, does that make sense? Like, because you're watching light fall across an object, so it needs to look light in the right places, and it needs to get dark in the right places. Sometimes I can put a dark green where it really should be maybe a dark red, and it works. So I think more tonally, I guess, but I learned a lot from you.
So I think a follow-up question to that from Sarah is, do you work out the amazing color palette in advance, or mix and choose as you go?
Sort of a bit of both. Like I paint sections of it, but I mix for that section. I don't keep recipes though. I know other painters do, because I feel like trying to get the similar color is more interesting than getting the exact color when I need to go back into it.
Question from Amy. Have you ever heard from any of your Persisters?
I have, yes. The most astounding. Oh yes, the most astounding one was from Justice Ginsburg, though, because a friend of hers had seen the painting and sent her a JPEG, and she requested a print, which we sent to the Supreme Court. And I was busy cutting the hedge one day, and the mail came, and I went to the mailbox and saw, here's a little letter from the Supreme Court, and I thought, oh God, what have I done? And I opened it up, and there's this beautiful handwritten note from Justice Ginsburg thanking me so much for the print, and telling me she'd hang it in a private place in her chambers. I could have stopped painting there and then. I could have just retired. It was not expected, but it's become a sort of byproduct of this process, and in a way it sort of is the natural byproduct, because they are these women that I'm painting. So, but it was lovely. And Rachel, Maddo has seen her painting. She came to the gallery to see it. I know that Greta has seen hers on Instagram. Ibtihaj Mohammed has seen hers on Instagram also. I believe that Kamala has seen her painting because somebody had sent a picture of it in a gallery window. Who else do we have? Ayanna Presley, who is at Women Crafts, she saw it and actually sent me a certificate to thank me very much for making the painting.
Yeah.
Who else do we have? I think Megan Rapinoe has seen her painting, but not from me, but through friends of friends. And I think that's it.
All right, question from Chris. For you, what is the most challenging part of the creative process, and what is the most rewarding part?
There are two most rewarding parts. The first one is when, because of the way that I paint, I sort of build it in stages, I guess. But there's a moment when, and it's always about the eyes, when I'm painting the eyes and the whole thing just kind of clicks into life. And it's almost like, I think I've described this before with you, that it's almost like the painting takes a breath. And it's just because somehow I've put the colours down in the right way and they themselves are making this sort of alchemical moment of life. I will lose that again because that's the nature of the painting, but there's that particular moment where it suddenly goes and you think, okay, I can get through this. Because the grueling part of it and the what was the word that you asked, that you used, the most challenging part is that you have to keep collapsing it and building it at the same time. So you can make something and lose it, and particularly if you're painting loosely, well, I'll speak for myself because I don't know how to paint tight. There's a lot of destruction going on while you're sort of looking 2 steps ahead. Well, I'll do that, and then I'm going to put this over it so it'll resolve it, and So there'd be many weeks of sleepless nights dancing, thinking like, oh my God, I left it in such a horrible, it's grotesque is often the word that comes to mind. That the features are just not looking good. And I lie awake at night thinking, I've got to get that sorted out. And then the second fabulous moment is when the painting is resolved and it's just like, oh, that's it. Everything's in place. I can walk away.
Okay. What do you hear from young people who experience your work?
Young people.
Well, I know my daughter is blown away.
I think it's pretty much. I'm not sure that I could tell you what the difference between the comments are pretty much the same always. The general thing is you've got the essence of the person. I think to non-painters, this idea that it is just paint and you can see the paint marks is sort of fascinating, and if I just step back, it all comes together, and which that is the truth of it.
Yeah,
that is what I'm doing. But I think it's sort of that's what blows them away. Younger painters, I'm not entirely sure that I get different questions from them.
All right. And then one comment that I wanted to share, which was said at the beginning, but while you guys were speaking, was from Linda. Never seen the studio look so tidy.
It's true. We don't know what you're talking about.
It's all outside.
Okay. And another question came in from Sarah. Do you see yourself moving on or stepping away from portraiture, or are you hooked?
I think hooked is definitely the answer. Although there needs to be a break from it every now and again because of the intensity of definitely for this series, because that emotional weight of them was different to any other emotional weight that I've experienced painting. Yes, I will continue even if something comes in between.
And no more questions.
Oh, as we say that. Do you see another series in the future, and what would it be?
I don't know. As much as the time period in which I painted these paintings was for me intense and painful and almost unbearable at times, it was the fuel for these paintings, and I don't know how to get that again. So I don't know what the next series would be. I know that I will continue painting these paintings, and they will probably evolve because of that emotional shift that I've just spoken about. But I'm sort of almost interested myself just to see how it changes because of that.
Yeah, you're still in it. It's almost like you couldn't possibly when you're not in it anymore, you will know, right?
Right.
So it's this process of almost, like that book Big Magic, right? I don't know if you've
ever.
Anyway, it's about the the creative process coming into you, and if you ignore it, it goes away. And if you pay attention to it, you can hold it for as long as you want, as long as you keep moving it forward.
Right.
And I just love that creative process, the way people think about that even in their day-to-day life. Now, you don't have to be a painter to have this idea, and if you're not paying attention to what's going on around you, you lose the inspiration, you lose the idea.
Yes.
And somebody else will do it.
Right, that's absolutely
If you
true.
don't do it, someone else is going to do it.
Yeah.
So I just find that concept about paying attention to like the world around us. And I feel like that's what you've done with Persisters, and so it's almost like you're just not done yet.
Right, I'll keep going, yeah.
Just keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is, when they talk about something being a labour of love, it really is because of the amount of time spent in front of something like this, but it's also love of the subject. So I feel that unless I have that real desire to paint somebody, it's a completely different experience. Not to say that you can't do something and it have its own successes, but I can feel this time period, and I will always feel this time period because of the way I felt when I painted them.
I love it.
So how did you come up with the title of Persisters?
Oh, of course, good question, and you're going to yeah.
Good question.
It's from CK.
I think it was in 2017. Mitch McConnell in the Senate. They were having a vote to make Elizabeth Warren shut up. I mean, those two words, shut up. And it continued, and Mitch McConnell said, nevertheless, she persisted. So I took it from that because it was a play on sisters and persisting, and it seemed like often the things that seem really obvious, you think, should I be second guessing this? But we just went with it, and it stayed, and it seemed right.
It does seem right.
It does.
It's so natural. Yeah, it feels very organic. Yeah, I love it.
All right, another question. Any thoughts on the concept of doing a self-portrait?
I have actually done a self-portrait. It was one of the 7 feet by 6 feet, and it was my alter ego, and I'm wearing a top hat, and I made a mustache and the whole jacket and ruffled up tie thing, and that painting in itself changed my sense of myself and painting. I'm stumbling to actually explain that properly because it freed me somehow. I don't know whether it's just because I recorded myself, because I consider I'm recording time. And if I hadn't made an image of myself, I can only say this in retrospect, there was something about making an image of myself, whether it was good, bad or indifferent, that I knew it was me. I felt that I had seen myself. I'd seen myself as a painter, something like that. It just allowed me to sort of let go and say, okay, now I need to paint everybody else.
You're gonna do one of yourself in this style?
No, it is in that sort of. I mean, the paintwork is the same.
Oh, it is. Okay,
yes.
I'm thinking of a different painting that you shared with me. That was more. It was tighter.
Oh, which painting did that be? No, it's like 6 feet by 6 feet
No,
by
I
10
haven't
feet.
seen it. Okay, interesting. Sorry.
No worries.
Yes.
Great question from Chris. What advice would you give someone who's considering a career in the arts?
Ooh. You will always be satisfied with what you do on a day-to-day basis. Not to say you won't be frustrated, but you will always be fulfilled, or you'll always have the potential to feel fulfilled, and you will probably do great things that you don't expect that you can do. Just sort out financially how you're going to exist. That's the word of advice that I would say. That counts to know how to,
Yeah.
to
How
keep.
to business plan.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to the degree that it's going to prevent you from painting and working, but
Right.
but don't ignore it.
Yeah, I think that's so important to have that balance of understanding how to make a living
Yes.
at art. And, that's one of the things that the Arts Foundation actually just received quite a bit of funding through the state, thanks to Senator Sear. We'll have some funding for Creative Exchange, which is a professional development for artists. And I know that Jordan is starting to plan. I know she has taxes and money for artists coming up in the next, I think that's in a couple weeks.
March 8th.
March 8th, so we'll send out information about that. But that's just a side note. But yeah, that's something that the Arts Foundation is really invested in as we look towards the future of how do we get creative workers to not stop being creative workers and artists to continue to focus on their art. It's not an easy life.
It's not. No.
It's not
the
easy.
best, but it's not.
It's the best.
Yeah, it is the best.
Yeah. It's almost like, no, I was going to say blessing and a curse in some ways, right? Because you have like this passion to like jump into the work, and then it's like, oh my gosh, I really need to have a business plan and to make, rent or mortgage or, and I think that one of the things that we see here at the Arts Foundation is, that crossover in housing issues, health insurance, how do people make a living and be able to stay here?
Yes.
It's a real struggle. So it's very important to the Cape community to have artists like you that continue to build on your skills and your body of work. So we're really grateful for you to be here, to end up here.
Well, likewise though, because you guys supported me during the pandemic, so I feel that it's a really lovely symbiotic relationship that the foundation is monumentally important.
Thank you for that. So I think any questions or comments that we want to share, and I'm just going to check the time. Okay. Oh, Tom Chartrand, who is our camera person, has a question.
In getting footage of this, the eyes are just so captivating in every picture they draw you in. At what point in the process of the painting each one do the eyes take shape, and does that drive your creative process?
I try to treat the eyes, when painting them, I try to treat them like everything else, because I could get so sucked into, oh my god, these are eyes and this is the thing, the windows of the soul, and they've got to look right. And so I tried not to get too overwhelmed by the power of the eyes, because I feel the same thing too. So they will sort of come and go also with the rest of the painting. And sometimes they don't, I'll almost leave parts of them till the very end, which I know lots of people don't. They keep their eyes going ahead of time. But in order for it, the way that I want the paintings to appear is almost like they're sort of resolving and collapsing at the same time. So if I resolve one area of it, I can't, if I resolve one area before everything else, it doesn't come together the way I want it to. But there is that moment that I described before, that where it breathes, and it is because of the eyes. It's doing something with the eyes. Does that kind of
Absolutely,
Yeah. That's so cool. Thank you for having us here.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, we could talk all night. It's just such a warm space. I love being here with you and our team here. So I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight.
Me too.
And yeah, it's been so fun. So this is our first, you're like the first studio tour. You're our first Artist of the Year. And you're just blowing us away with everything that you're doing for us. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
So I want to thank everybody for logging in tonight and joining us for this intimate discussion with our Artist of the Year, Joe Hay, here live in Provincetown. And we will be doing 3 more of these. The next one is with Joe Diggs. And then we actually, we have Joe Diggs, and then we have who is a visual artist here on Cape Cod. And then we have award-winning director, photographer, cinematographer, Cinnamon Toast, and Emmy-nominated producer Tasha Van Sant. And we also have visual artist Robert Henry, and we'll be back out on the Outer Cape in Wellfleet to see Bob Henry. We're super excited about joining these other 3 artists in their studios as well. But this has been a great first, and yeah, so delightful. And so I also want to thank William Ravis again and our patrons for your support and the community for supporting the arts. So thank you very much, and we'll see you in Osterville with Joe Diggs next month. So thank you and good night.